Welcome everyone to our ULT meeting. I know we were all looking forward to getting together in person in September, and I'm sorry that we have to go through this by Zoom again. And I'm so hopeful that I'm hopeful this is the last time we have to do this, and we get together in person going forward. Back in June when we were together, I used a runner's analogy when we thought that in March of 2020, this was going to be a sprint or maybe even a half marathon at most. Well, it's turned out that it's not only been a full marathon, but what feels like multiple marathons stacked on top of each other. But thankfully, Benedictine went into this pandemic in a very strong financial position. If we had not made some of the tough decisions that we made prior to the pandemic to get Benedictine back on stable ground, I really think we would be having very difficult conversations on the future of the ministry today. So thank you once again for the work that you have done, not only during the pandemic, but leading up to it, because it is all of this work has helped make Benedictine a stronger ministry. So I want to say thank you to the leadership, to the frontline associates, to everyone who has stepped up and stepped out of their normal job duties to keep our residents safe and keep our doors open. We know we have many associates who have taken on additional work duties. We have executive directors that are cooking meals. We have DONs who are coming in on weekends to cover shifts. We have physical therapists who are doing the job of CNAs to fill gaps. And we have HR leads that are screening residents and visitors at the door. And that's just scratching the surface of all of the different job responsibility that people are taking on during this time. It truly epitomizes the phrase above and beyond. So thank you for all that you do. And for many of you, you are doing more with less people. By far, there's more regulations, there's more policies, there's new procedures. And for some of you, this has really gone from a marathon, or as I mentioned, multiple marathons, to an Ironman event. And for those of you that don't know what an Ironman is, it's a 2.4 mile swim, which quite honestly, personally, that would be the end of me. Then it's a 112 mile bike ride, and then it's the marathon. You end with the marathon of 26.2 miles. So I think we've passed the sprint, we passed the marathon, and it feels like now we're in this Ironman. So as we think about this journey that we have been on, albeit not the best journey and positive journey that we've been on, studies have shown one of the best antidotes to stress is developing a practice of gratitude. And I know that you are all dealing with a lot of stress. So let's try to take a shift right now and start with sharing, what are you grateful for? So once again, if you haven't downloaded the poll everywhere, here's the instructions once again. Give you just a minute to take a look at this. Hopefully most or all of you have already downloaded the app or have joined by web, but I'm going to flip over to the, yeah, I completely agree with that. We have great coworkers. And I will say, not too long ago, I was visiting, I visited a few of our communities. And those individuals that we have out there they were just fantastic. I mean, they were upbeat. They knew they were tough. It was tough times, but I would say the climate of the frontline staff were pretty good, at least in those buildings that I was in. Yeah. So we're seeing, a little bit of a common theme here. It's that. Yeah, strong executive directors. Completely agree with that. Yeah, this is what I saw. Hospitality of the staff when we visited. They're so kind, so helpful. Completely agree with that. Yeah, I love the comment about the residents. As I was making my way through a few of these communities, the residents were so grateful of the staff and knew that there were staffing challenges, but just loved the associates that they came in contact with. Yeah, the team's sticking with us, right? That has been tremendous. Yeah, team. So I keep hearing, you keep seeing this team, right? this part of being Benedictine, part of being, bigger than oneself. Oh, there's a word I'm going to have to look that one up, but that's resilient. Yeah, and we'll hear a little bit more about that, right? Thank you, whoever put my faith. I think you're right on. Yeah, smiles and laughs. What you kind of listened to what we heard with the Claudia Real winners. Several of them was that infectious laugh or that smile, right? Ah, great. Yeah, above and beyond, right? Yeah, once again, and the residents are recognizing this also. Yeah, dedication. I see that every day. I hear it every day. Yeah, dedication, teamwork, dedication, part of a larger family. Our DON is a superhero. Aren't they all, right? Yeah, that's great. Kindness, yes. Yeah. Don't we need that, right? Don't you need that person that's kind of in your corner when you're having a bad day who can lift you up? Yeah, we all need that. Yeah, God's protection. Absolutely. Hope. Yeah. Yeah, I love that, the team that can make things laugh. I saw that in as I go through the communities. I see that. I really do. Yeah, supportive family. How do we get through, a lot of these without having that supportive family? So this is great. Thank you, everyone. So let's take a minute to talk a little bit about support center strategies. So while you at the communities have been on the front line ministering to the needs of the residents and tackling the pandemic head on, the support center also continues to work very hard behind the scenes with overall system support and stepping in for communities when they may be struggling at times. So as we consider the role of the support center and those jobs that have been traditionally carried out, this is, really kind of a high level representation of the work that the support center has always done. However, each department is tackling additional work to drive success within Benedictine, much like the local communities that you and your team are taking on additional job responsibilities and roles. So has the support center. And of course, we don't want each community doing different things in a silo when it can be accomplished on a ministry-wide basis. And we've had great success in this approach. So for example, we've had the finance team manage the receipt of the provider relief funds, right? I mean, that was a huge undertaking. Kristen and Denise, through all of this, have been so active in the managing of the supply chain challenges. And of course, I think very early on in this pandemic when, Kristen, I think, was on the phone practically 24 hours a day finding PPE, right? Because everything became so tight. And then, of course, the PD team has been taking on additional responsibilities. But of course, that just scratches the surface. As many of you know, there's been additional duties that have been taken on. And you'll hear more details when Laura, Gift, Lori, Kevin, and Steve share their information. And of course, the COVID task force, I could never let this group get by without some kind of a mention. So I want to give, once again, another shout out to the COVID-19 task force. Even before a single COVID-19 case was found in the United States, Shelley Bola was tracking the COVID-19 outbreak in China and laying the groundwork for the COVID-19 task force. When CMS shut down nursing homes for visitors in March of last year, Benedictine was already getting policies and procedures in place because we saw this coming. We had this team already engaged. And of course, this team has put together hundreds of documents related to policies, checklists, procedures, guidelines, and the like, as the government, has constantly put out new guidance to us. So we've had to continually update this information. And of course, that task has taken calls at all hours of the day, When there's been a positive case, they're right there to help those communities when there's an outbreak of some sort. And of course, they've kept up with CDC, CMS, and state health department mandates and regulations. And, just an hour ago, maybe hour and a half ago, many of you probably saw this, but we just received news this morning that the vaccine, the guidance around the vaccine mandates is out. So our team has already pivoted. They're starting to review this information, and we'll be getting some guidance out to the communities regarding these mandates as soon as we've had time to kind of read through it to get a better feel of, what are we up against here? We knew this was coming a couple of months ago, and this morning the information was published. So that team is going to be actively engaged with navigating through and reading through this material. So while Shelley is gone, and we'll soon be saying goodbye to Jerry as she retires and enters this next phase of her life, this task force will keep going strong until hopefully the day comes when we don't need it anymore. They've been doing great work, but I tell you what, I'll be glad when we no longer need those efforts. So I'm really proud of the hard work and dedication of this group, and thank you to those of you that are part of this team. Well, of course, another behind the scenes effort I want to make you aware of is the advocacy work being done at the federal and state levels. Even at the very beginning of the pandemic, many of us shifted our responsibilities to advocate on behalf of local senior care providers with state and federal regulations, of which I've personally been very engaged with. I was telling somebody the other day that, prior to the pandemic, probably 10% of my time was around advocacy, and now it's easy 50% and probably higher around advocating on behalf of Benedictine as well as the senior care industry in general. For some examples is early on, advocacy efforts were focused on additional funding to keep staff in place during the lockdown mandates. You may remember that. And most recently, advocacy efforts were focused on correcting the problems associated with the announcement of the vaccine mandate when it was focused only on nursing homes. The entire industry, including myself as a representative of Benedictine and others, immediately stepped in and said, this is going to cause a problem. We need to make this broader. And what we see now with the announcements that came out today, those advocacy efforts paid off. And of course, what we're seeing in a lot of our states is advocacy around improving reimbursement, because as you know, we are in an extremely competitive labor market right now. So whatever we can do to improve our reimbursement rates to help with increasing wages and such for those staff members of ours, our associates, is going to be critical. So personally, I'm spending more time than I ever have in my career around these advocacy efforts. And I know many of you are also. You get calls from whether it's Leading Age or other organizations to help with these types of environments. And of course, we don't have to look very far to see that recruitment just isn't a Benedictine problem, right? It's everywhere. It's hard to get our kids on the school bus because of bus driver shortages. Restaurants aren't staying open 7 days a week. Packages aren't getting delivered on time, and so on. Our industry, what we do as senior care providers, is part of an economy that is shifting with a workforce that is re-examining what work is and what they want from an employer. And many of those that are re-examining their work life are long-term care workers. They're individuals that are in the senior care industry. A study done on direct care workforce reentry shows the challenges that exist for us coming out of this pandemic, as I hopefully anticipate we're on the backside of this. Direct care workers are just not coming back to senior care as compared to other industries, even with extensive recruitment strategies and posting on multiple job boards. And as many of you know, it's frustrating when you're working short staff, you have people ghost you in interviews. That seems to be kind of a newer, I don't say it's a new term, but it's one that's getting used quite often. And even when they accept a position, they just don't show up on the first day. They don't even let you know. And we're not alone in this challenge, unfortunately. This is a long-term care industry issue, and as mentioned, there are efforts at the national and state level looking to address this. And of course, there's efforts that are occurring at the support center trying to address this challenge also. I really want to wrap up today with a bright look toward what's happening in the future. So I'm glad you had the chance to hear from the executive leadership team about the work they've been doing on behalf of Benedictine. Their efforts, along with your work at the community level, is what's keeping the doors open at Benedictine and allows us to keep moving forward. Kevin showed the financial performance, and you can sense how the previous couple of years operations was really kind of supporting Benedictine as a whole, and this last year, a lot of the work at the support center and investments helped to prop up what has been admittedly a weak year in operations strictly because of the COVID pandemic and the challenges that has placed. And in fact, I don't know if you noticed this on Kevin's slide, but he showed for the first 3 months, our cost of labor is at 67.4%. And last year, we were at 63.3%, our cost of labor as a percentage of revenue. And I can't help but to think of the correlation from when I started in this role 4 years ago. And those of you that may remember this, I showed a slide at the very first ULT meeting, and it had a number 67% on it. I think that might have been the only thing that was on that slide. And what that represented was, as an organization, if we're running 60% cost of labor to revenue, it's not sustainable. And as you may recall, we were really struggling as an organization financially at that time. So you can see we've taken this full circle around, and thank goodness, as I mentioned earlier, that we went into this pandemic strong, because if we would have started off at that 67% and we saw that degradation of 4 and 5%, we'd be in some real hard times right now. So we're kind of back to square one to some extent, although there's different circumstances that are creating this particular environment that we have to work through. But I know we can get there. We've done it before, and that is why you're hearing from Laura and her team around recruitment retention. We've got to get that pool under control, and you're hearing from Gift because we've got to increase our census as we move through this. But our ministry continues to be strong. We're not as strong as where we were a year or two ago, but we're very strong because it's built on a strong foundation. That strong foundation that we were building over the years, whether it was through ministry and mission, and ultimately had to work on some financials, we had this really strong financial. But as you've seen today with our Claudia Real honorees and internal spirit nominees, people are one of the strongest pillars. In fact, I think that the strongest pillars of our foundation. Of course, the other three pillars that we have specifically from a strategic standpoint are identity, service, and finance. But you may remember back in June, we had Sister Lisa Maurer met with us, and she gave a wonderful talk on stability. And specifically what she talked about is that the ups and downs of life is where we are confronted with the challenge of stability, which was the quintessential value and virtue for St. Benedict. And in fact, he made it one of the sisters' vows, and Sister Lisa was talking about this. But what stability asks of us is that we stay with the process. Even though the course of action is counterintuitive, even though everything seems to be going wrong and we really want to run and turn back or kind of stop, what is asked of us is that we keep standing amid the strong storms and whirlwinds. Yet stability does not involve standing still. It does not involve resting, or it does not involve doing nothing. It means staying with the process, staying true to what you have decided to do as an organization. It's true to carrying out our mission and ministry. So with that in mind, and in the spirit, and in spite of the pandemic, quite honestly, several important strategic initiatives have moved forward, albeit a little slower than anticipated, which really should come as no surprise to anybody. Our strength continues to draw interest from others wanting to join our ministry, and it really positions us in a unique position to expand the Benedictine ministry and the Catholic senior care environment. And in fact, the number of inquiries that we have had to acquire senior care facilities is increasing exponentially. What I think is kind of interesting and of note is the number of empty senior care facilities that have retained their license, but they have ceased operations. Now, we're not pursuing those opportunities, but this is really a testament of the financial strength of Benedictine as the pandemic has progressed. Many providers have simply not been able to weather that storm and survive and essentially have closed down. And there have been certain growth opportunities that have shown to be interesting, and we're in discussions with them. Some of you may have heard just recently that we are in the final stages of acquiring a home health agency up in the Duluth market that will actually be a subsidiary of Barb Westberg's ministry up there at Benedictine Living Community of Duluth. I think that's probably going to close later on this year. But we also have a lot of other opportunities that are being presented to this. And while we may have these opportunities that present themselves and certainly look interesting to pursue, we've turned down many of them because we know there's that right balance. What's the right balance of stability to continue to move forward in our process, but yet maintain the immediate needs of our communities? So that does not mean, as we think through this, that this will not prevent us from moving forward in our 60-40 strategic process. Quite honestly, the pandemic has validated the Benedictine strategy to move toward a higher housing percentage of total units. Once again, those of you that have been around for 3 or 4 years, you remember we put that strategy in place that we want to increase the percentage of living units up to 60%. And this gives you a little bit of a snapshot of what we've seen since 2018. The green bar being the housing, and the orange bar being the skilled nursing. So we've really made some nice progress in here. But the pandemic really came forth and said this is the right strategy. Because while skilled nursing bed occupancy has had these strong census swings due to COVID-19 outbreaks, staffing challenges, you name it, we're finding that, as we had suspected, skilled nursing beds is highly dependent on staffing patterns, highly impacted by regulatory restrictions and also payment constraints. Housing, on the other hand, has been much more stable in all of these areas and has shown to be much more rounded in our vision of creating Benedictine living communities where health, wellness, and choice come to life. I want to accentuate the choice word because, as you may recall, in the housing, and maybe to some extent the assisted living, depending on where we were at, we had to lock them down. But yet the independent living, for the most part, kind of continued on per normal. And when I talk about the swings in census, just going back to August, our total occupancy in the nursing homes was 1,754. Today we're at 1,665. So we're down about 90 units, 90 beds. Our occupancy down about 90 since August alone. However, housing has been on this slow, steady upward trajectory. And in fact, when we look back on January, we were at 1,870 individuals that were living in our communities. Today, we're at 1,911. So really kind of the exact opposite of what we're seeing in skilled. So we ended last year with 53.2% of our units being housing. That was up from the previous year of 52.3%. So a continued nice increase. And what drove that was the opening of Shakopee and the acquisition of BLC at the Shrine, which added a total of 359 units to the Benedictine ministry for that last year. Well, let's go back to the running metaphor. I seem to have started this a few months ago, but we will get to the finish line of COVID. We will celebrate together, and we will keep moving forward, because together, all of us are Benedictine strong, all in together. So now I want to jump back into another poll question. Once again, if you get your phones ready or your desktops ready, that would be great. So I'm going to pop up a question here. So what is something you are looking forward to post COVID-19? No mask. I get that. Uh, and while these are coming forward, Jerry, I believe this might have been your note. She just gave a nice little thank you for all of the kind words that were said uh, uh, during the opportunity for folks to present the one word that they thought about with Jerry. So Jerry, hopefully that came through. So thank you. Yeah, I think everybody wants to get together in Duluth, that's for sure. I know the sisters are anxious too. Yeah, no staffing calls. I get that. Connection, absolutely. That's who we are, right? It's who we are as a Benedictine family. It's who we are as people. Yeah, seeing full faces. We just came out of Halloween, and I saw kind of an interesting little tidbit that made its way around social media. And it was the scariest mask this year was one that had a little girl's face that didn't have a mask on it. So I thought that was kind of cute. Yeah, children visiting more communities. Yep. Yeah, in-person meetings. I tell you what, gang, if we never have another Zoom meeting again, I would be one of the happiest people around. I can't wait for us to be on a more normal meeting schedule where we see each other face to face. Yeah, we see a handful of themes here, don't we? And these themes really are really part of who we are as part of a Benedictine family. It's being together in community. All right. Very good. Well, thank you very much, everybody.